Welcome, Thrivers, to this week's episode of Women Thriving in Business podcast. I'm so excited to have with me today Tasha Jones, who is the founder of 2039 LLC. Welcome, Tasha.
Hi, Nikki. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. It's been a long time coming, so I'm excited to see what we talk about today.
Same here. I'm excited as well. We've had some good personal conversations, so let's see
Yes.
where this takes us.
Now it's time to take it out to the audience. So, Tasha, let's start with telling us about your business, 2039, including the name and the origin of the name, and how you got started in government consulting.
So 2039, the name itself is basically a legacy year, and it represents an ending and a beginning. And the goal is by 2039, a certain percentage of our profits go towards a trust. And the intent is to build up that trust to a certain amount so that we can start to deploy those dollars at scale, giving back to communities that we support. Currently, very actively involved in the startup and angel investor space on the board for Citrine Angels. And we also support Great Explorations. It's a nonprofit that exposes children to opportunities beyond what most likely their own eyes can see because of the spaces that they're likely in and the environment that they grow up in. And so we do a lot of support for that. And I want to do more of the community building and supporting entrepreneurs, especially women founders, in those different spaces. And so 2039 is based on a trust and the intent of building that fund up to that date. And then at that date going forward to hopefully be able to deploy those dollars at scale. And what we do, we simplify processes, to put it simply. And we have two lines of business. Our B2B line of business focuses on small businesses that are interested in or already in the government contracting space. And we help reduce the learning curve for pursuing government opportunities by streamlining, optimizing, automating certain processes associated with pursuing government contracts. And then on the government side of the house, we actually pursue government contracts. We are focused heavily on state right now, but we have had defense and federal contracts as well, working on transformation modernization initiatives, providing data support services, CETA support, as well as project and program management.
And how did you get started in the government contracting space?
So I got started as a consultant. I started as an independent consultant. And honestly, in the beginning, I didn't have aspirations of scaling the business. I just needed to have a break from the responsibility of running very large, very complex programs. And honestly, the work of doing that wasn't stressful. It was the people part, because I really care about the people that work with me and that I'm serving and that I'm supporting. And if I have a team, I feel responsible for ensuring that everyone is taken care of, and the career progression, whatever their goals are with that, that's important to me. In addition to, of course, delivering our programs and projects, technical initiatives, whatever I'm being assigned to be responsible for, I want to make sure I accomplish that as well. And as much as I enjoy solving problems and fixing things, that people piece is very emotionally draining for me. Although I present as an extrovert, I am definitely an introvert that acts and plays as an extrovert. And so I've been in this space over 25 years, 26 years, I think. And a lot of that has been full speed, constantly just doing what they tell you to do. Say yes to the hard projects and don't ever say no because it's an opportunity, and saying yes and yes and yes, and taking all the nobody want to touch projects and stuff. And after a while, you just get tired. So I started as a consultant on my own with the hopes of being able to be more selective about the projects that I pick and being able to take a little bit more time off so that I could recuperate and focus on family more, focus on learning myself more. And so that's kind of how I initiated it. And I fortunately had a support system and network to help facilitate that. I was at one of the 3-letter agencies with a company and decided to transition. And the government lead, as well as one of our partners who was a prime on the CETA work there, wanted me to stay on board. And so they worked it out. And that's kind of how I got my first contract, is just by transitioning from a client that I was already currently supporting.
I've heard this story multiple times. A lot of us who have been in government, been in government consulting, government contracting, and have reached a stage where we want more freedom more, like you said, you get to be intentional about the projects that you take on and the work that you do that actually leads to a business, right? Like I think we often are seeking freedom and then we also find like, oh, this is a path to career fulfillment, is a career to wealth, is a career to legacy building as
Correct.
you've done in 2039. So talk to me a bit about when you went from, oh, this is nice, I can be an independent consultant, to, wait a minute, I think I have something here I can build into a business.
I kind of dabbled in that almost the whole time, probably after the first 6 months. It's like I was constantly being asked to do additional support for different things. And if it was something that looked interesting, or it was people that I liked working with, or just something I was curious about, I would accept those opportunities. And I was very intentional about the total time that I wanted to work, the hours, if you want to call it that, that I would be billable. And so I started to partner with other consultants to broker for them to do some of the work that I was taking on. It still allowed me to engage and kind of satisfy that curiosity, or provide that support for that partner who I had a good relationship with, because ultimately I was responsible for delivery. But I would broker with other consultants that would allow me to scale revenue a bit more than without me having to be billable for all the hours. And so the more I got those one-off engagements to do those types of things, the more I started thinking about realistically, how would I scale as an actual business, and versus more of a, what I think we hear in the government space as a lifestyle company. How could I actually scale and be more of a traditional business, and grow this to be a contractor that eventually could be competitive at some of the higher levels?
So I know that you come from a military background, you're a Navy veteran, you spent time as a civilian employee, and now starting your own business. What has helped you through all those different transitions? So you're coming from what you knew, what you molded and grew up in, and doing a lot of different transitions, right? So how have you been able to translate your skills? You know, I hear a lot of transitioning service members, like they have challenges in translating their skills into the civilian world, and then just finding your way, right? It's just a very different way of operating. So can you talk a bit about how you've been able to navigate those transitions and be successful?
I would have to say over time, the transitions, they changed. They were different. The one constant, and I said this before, I had a really good support system. That's been constant. I've always had the support system. The other piece I would say, although some people think I'm a risk taker and they're like, oh, nothing scares you. You just go and do stuff. And yes and no. I always have multiple backup plans in case something doesn't work out quite the way that I would hope that it would work out. And I think having that consistent support structure, planning in advance, and having alternative options for the things that are very important. I'm a wife, I'm a mother. In certain cases, how is it going to impact my responsibilities that I can't lay down or I can't pause? I'm a mom. You can't not be a mom. At least in my book, I cannot be a mom. That's not an option. I cannot be a wife. I made that commitment. So, how is this transition going to impact those things? And then financially, what is the impact there, and how to mitigate anything that could go awry that's associated with that, because ultimately that ties to those other responsibilities that I can't pause. And so for me, thinking through in advance when I'm getting ready to have a transition, those, having that foundation, and then having those backup plans for different options and ways to exit strategies from the plan, and then ensuring that I've accommodated the financial aspects and ensure that I'm not taking too much of a high risk there. Usually when I've made a move, those things have been taken care of and addressed first. I don't know if those things are important for everyone, but for me, those have been paramount in helping to facilitate me being able to make risky, in some instances, people would think, or strategic moves in the pivot. The other piece is talking to people. That's very important, to speak with folks that you see doing what you think you want to do. And I say what you think you want to do because sometimes I think we glamorize what we don't know. if you're in the military and you see people in nice business suits and got an office, the corner office thing, that facade of the professionalism outside of the military can look really enticing. But then you get out and then you have to wear a suit and you feel good for a little bit. And it's like you get to dress up and be sharp and you step in and you like, yeah, okay. But then after a while, you like, this is for the birds. I'm tired of sitting at this desk. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
This is my
man, like
job every day.
every day. It's like, okay. So then it gets old. Like you're like, I want to do something different. So talking to people who are in those roles, I think helps a lot too. And not being afraid to put yourself out there to ask and show that you're still curious and you're trying to learn. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and still do informational interviews with people that are in positions or doing things that you would like to do, but you're not really sure how to even get started or what to expect, what it is not, just asking all those different questions.
I love you brought up that idea of the informational interviews. We live in a time where you can search for anything you want to know on the internet, right? There's
Yeah.
all this information at hand. It's surprising to me people who aren't curious enough to do that piece, right? You can look up anything. You can look up what it means to be a government contractor. You can look up what it means to be a doctor. You can look up all these things, but you just touched on something. It's so important to have the human element. Literally on a day-to-day basis, what does it feel like, look like, sound like? What are the highs and lows of being in this career? I think those informational interviews, which don't cost you anything, right, are so important to really explore what is out there. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And even just thinking about in our line of business, doing informational interviews with folks who are doing business with the clients that we want to do business with.
Yeah.
You may say, like, oh, I want to work for this agency, but you don't know how they treat their contractors or if they pay on time or small things that really, as a small business, are really, really big things.
Yes.
Start to think about it.
Yes. Speaking of us being small businesses in GovCon, they have big impact, those little small things. And then what if you end up jumping in, like you said, to an agency and they don't pay on time? Like there's been policy changes where there's a bit more bite for agencies to get at primes who don't pay their subs within a certain period of time. But what if the agency doesn't really enforce those things? And what if their small business office isn't engaged? They're not really active. There's a whole lot of stuff because then you get in and you're working there and it's your flagship agency, but now you're kind of struggling to scale or to branch out or to grow with other things because that agency environment isn't conducive for businesses like yours or at the state that yours is in. And you become a little bit more maybe needy or dependent on other businesses or otherwise it limits your opportunity, I guess, for options for how you would choose to try to grow your company. So yeah, it is important to have those conversations.
I want to go back to this idea of a support system. And I know you're kind of personally and professionally, but you've helped a lot of business in the GovCon space and being in the GovCon space yourself. What is the support system that GovCon businesses really need to have in place? Whether it be who or what? What does that support system look like to help you be successful in this space?
It looks different for different people. And I only say that because it really depends on where you're coming from. If you're a consultant and that's all you want to be is a consultant, how the type of network you need, at least the people that are the decision makers look a little different from a company that wants to scale or that has employees or a company that's coming in as kind of like acquisition first and looking to scale and exit at some point versus a legacy company that's going to come in and stay for a while and pass it down. But overall, the network is multi-pronged. You definitely need, I say, your personal, that inner circle. If you think about the bullseye, I think that's family, that's your friend family, girlfriends, guy friends. And I would say at the next level, you want to have those trusted business relationships, those partners who you've either worked with in some capacity and you'd already developed a sense of trust and understanding, or at least consideration, like for each other, you guys, and you're on that road of becoming more so friends, but you definitely have a trusted relationship and having that set of businesses. I try to diversify that level of my friendships and types of businesses as well. I don't want to have all businesses at that level that are doing the exact same thing as I am. I want businesses that complement the services that I have. So I try to meet people where we connect on things outside of business, outside of work, whether it's family, it's a love of track and field or volleyball or something else that I like doing. But then also there's some synergy where we could have the potential at some point to work together and complement each other versus compete. You do need a couple companies that may also do or have some kind of crossover with what you do, just because sometimes you may get into something that is larger than what you can do alone. And so there's always opportunity to share there. And then there's the companies that provide the support services that are on the vendor side that are at that level as well, because you can't do this alone. You're going to need support. And because we're small, you don't always have the money to pay for everything. And so by having those closer relationships and where you're helping them out and giving free information and vice versa, sometimes you can barter on services and things like that, or get a discount because they realize you're small and they may have a affinity for helping out small businesses. And then that next ring is companies that you want to build a relationship with. And I would say also the various, what we call them, professional organizations that exist. I think those sit in this space as well. Very well-known organizations like AFCEA, INSA, we have CCAF. I'm drawing a blank, but there's tons of them. And depending on like what your company does, there's ones that are aligned to like your potential competencies or services or certifications you may have, like the National 8A Association, the PTAC. These are government funded where they provide services to businesses at no cost. And then your big companies, your mid tiers that you've aspired to have a relationship with. Maybe if they're large enough, you've registered in their supplier database and you're just taking the opportunity to meet as many of the people there as possible. So very, very wide network is what you need in the government space. But always at the core, I think it's those people who've seen you at your ugliest, at your worst, have seen you snot cry and still like you. So
I love that. Those people are going to be up at 3 a.m. working on a proposal with you.
yes.
That's the part I miss most about having a larger team, right? Like
Mhm.
we're all in this together, but when you're out here on your own, it's just you. It's just
Well,
you talking to yourself at 3
that's that's true. That's true. But honestly, that first and second level sometimes has a bit of a blend. I will say that even though I am by myself, I've never felt alone in the business because I do have in those first two tiers people that when I'm like, man, why am I doing this? I can
They help
call,
talk you off the ledge.
I can text. I have a few employees now and really good relationships with them. They're kind of my core team as well. And it's so funny because I'll send an email, I'll be working late or something. It's like 2 a.m. or whatever. And I'll send an email and I try to remember to do the schedule send. And then sometimes I forget. And I do the same thing with text messages. Like I want them to get it right when they get up so you can schedule send a text. And then sometimes I push it and don't hold it long enough and it goes off. And then I feel so bad. And then it's like they immediately send me an emoji like they're up. And then they're like, what do you need help with? I have that camaraderie. It's a little different than being on a larger team and in a bigger environment with more resources. But I never have felt on an island myself because of the network that I've been fortunate to have.
Right. And I think that's so important to build. When you talk about the support system, it's like that net, right? It's having people who, even if they don't know what you're doing, they're going to listen to you. Those are the friends, the girlfriends, the spouses who are like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm here to listen to you, right? And then it's those other folks who understand what you're going through, understand the path that you're walking, and that you can call. Like sometimes it's just a quick phone call, like, hey, can you look at this? Because I just need another set of eyes on this.
Yep.
Or I'm working on pricing. Are my assumptions even correct? Like sometimes it's just having another person, right? Just
Yes.
one other person that you can just do a gut check
Mm-hmm.
and they say yes, or they say, here's my thoughts on this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just the important part of, like you said, not feeling like you're alone.
Yeah. And I stutter steps actually on really committing to scaling. So I only started scaling my business officially this year. I made the decision last year. And I'd been playing with it since I started in 2019. But I stutter step. And the reason I did is exactly what you just said. I was very hell bent on seeing if I could find a partner because in the roles that I've been in, I've been through a few mergers and acquisitions. And I had a first front row seat to also to a small business growing from being very small and starting to get that traction to start to grow. And I've observed other companies and how they do it. And honestly, I won't say that there's an easy way, but the companies that tend to have that quick rise usually are organizations that come in via acquisition. It's almost like buying into a space. You don't have to start up from zero or figure out how you're going to work yourself out of billable. You know what I'm saying? To be able to truly focus on the business. And you hear that all the time, work on the business, not in the business. And in this space, it's really hard to do that because of the way that opportunities tend to come. And also, when you take yourself out of the space, it makes it difficult because you're not getting the scuttlebutt. You know, if we say in the Navy, you're not the conversations that just naturally happen, like while you're eating at lunch or in the hallways or talking to a partner subcontractor that's on the same engagement as you, or that face to face with different government people and things like that, or that happenstance at the first Fridays that they have at the club on the base or something like that. So you're not getting that when you leave the space. And so it's very difficult starting from being like a consultant and transitioning. Those companies tend to take longer. And from what I've seen, they don't tend to scale as big. I know some that have, but on average, they don't scale at the pace or size as companies that come in via acquisition or that are ushered in by partnerships with larger companies that is actually putting them in a position to grow, which you kind of see a lot with some of the bigger consulting firms who have people spin off and start businesses and things of that nature.
I think that's important to understand. It's those relationships. I'm going to keep coming back to this word being intentional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Around how do you want to grow this company? What it is that you want to do ultimately. And with you having seen, you've been through the process with other companies and seen what was out there. What was your biggest fear in taking that leap? So going from, okay, I'm an independent consultant, now I want to scale. You haven't had these different experiences. What at that moment in time was your biggest fear around going to the next level with your business?
Being responsible for people's income.
Mhm.
That was like, as a consultant, it's just me. And I have no doubt I can make what I want to make. Actually, I did way more than what I needed to make or wanted to make. And so it was very comfortable. And I could pick and choose my projects and things like that because I didn't have to take everything. Whereas when you start to have employees, you might get a client that you don't like so much. And it's not as easy to be like, oh, okay, we need to go in this. You hesitate because you have people that you're responsible. Again, I feel responsible. I feel,
Right.
I've taken on this where I feel they trust me to come work for me and work with me in what I'm trying to do. And they believe in my mission. They believe in what I'm trying to grow and they want to be a part of it. And I feel just as committed to them as they've been with me. And so doing that work and doing it right, having the correct strategy and driving that revenue so that one, you can achieve what you're trying to accomplish, but also bring them along and help them achieve their story too, because it's part of my story. So yeah, that was the biggest fear. And because I had seen and I've done soup to nuts on growth strategy and business development, and I've also been on the government side and I know kind of all of the little nuances that happen with that and the different types of personalities and things of that nature. And I know what it takes to grow a company. And I'm not afraid of work, but it's a different kind of work. It's a different kind of grind. And it's hard to explain to people who haven't been in it. It's just a different kind of grind. And with all the regulations, it's not enough to just win contracts. You have to build infrastructure. You can't just be like, I'm not going to go to meet any new people unless, again, you're being set up. And people have those situations where they don't have to attend events like that. They don't have to do certain things, but that's not typical. That's not normal. If you are coming in the way that we did, you have to go to events. Even though you're tired, you have to meet people. But then you may not have the funding to pay somebody to come and do a certain graphic. And so trying to get creative with figuring out how to visualize what you know should be happening and make it align with your branding so that it looks professional and it goes with everything that you're doing while addressing an employee issue. And because an agency is taking like 6 months to let you onboard somebody because of whatever, and then trying to get your facility clearance for your company, all the paperwork for that, and then submitting your certification paperwork because you're trying to get the certification. So that gives you another tool to win work. I could go on, and you're doing all this at the same time, mostly by yourself. You're delegating as you can, but there's only so much you can delegate until you get to a certain size. So it's a lot. It's work.
And you know what? It is work, and I appreciate it. And the reason why I say I appreciate it is because now it underscores what it takes to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It just like every penny that I spend is a penny that I made. Every decision has these consequences. It makes you appreciate like the gravity of it. In the grand scheme of things, like we're little specks in the cosmos. But to the people that you impact with your business, you're very important. So
Correct.
I love that you said like your greatest fear was like, okay, now I'm responsible for someone's income, someone's livelihood, and their families and that, right? And so it is, I'd say, humbling and a privilege when people sign on to your vision, right?
Yes.
When someone says yes to you, like, yes, I'm going to come work for you.
I was like, really?
You're like, wait a minute, did I tell you all the stuff, right? And they still say yes because they believe in your vision. And I think that is the best thing as a small business when someone says, I'm coming to work because I believe in what you told me is what you're trying to do, right?
Hmm.
There's plenty of other jobs they could have. They probably
Yes.
pay more, got better benefits or whatever, but they're trusting you
Hmm.
to make this vision come to life. That's like awesome, right? Like
It is. It is. And scary, but awesome.
it's just awesome. So is this responsibility? What is something that you wish you had known, like either when you were first starting your business?
That this was where I was going to go. I really didn't think I was going to grow. Like, I just knew I wasn't going to want to scale my business. And I only say that because in GovCon, timing is important. And timing wise, my exposure and my network were in different places that would have been more lucrative at the timing when I first started. If I started where I am, I'd be a lot bigger right now. And now I will say the time did me some good and service was good for me. And I say that because it took me a while to accept that fear that I told you about, being responsible for people's income. And I've run whole portfolios at larger companies, upwards of 60, $80 million, and over 140, 50, 60 people on my team and all this stuff. But it wasn't mine. It was, but it wasn't. I wasn't responsible or worried that the company was going to go under. I was responsible for my department. I was responsible for my group or my project, my program, but not the whole ship. I wish I knew that I would get here. I think some part of me probably thought I did because I always had systems and processes and things in place. I think that's the core of who I am. But I was like, if for some crazy reason I made a decision to grow, I wanted to have things in place for that. So I did put that in place up front. But I think the timing of opportunity would have been better had I known this is what I wanted to do up front and started there.
Got it. Given all that you've done, both in your career and life, what would you say is the accomplishment that you're most proud of, particularly as it pertains to your business?
I would have to say having confidence in myself to actually take the step to grow the business. And I think a lot of people aspire to do it and they think about it and talk about it, but actually taking that step and executing to do something like this. I was just talking to my husband. Our anniversary was Sunday on the 20th. And thank you, thank you, thank you, 24 years. And so I was like, I never considered myself entrepreneurial at all. I even remember when I was younger thinking about how I would move up the chain because I heard that That's what you're supposed to do. Work your hardest and work your way up. And every time I got into a space, I always felt like it was acceptable. I had to start at zero and work my way up every time. And I think that was part of what got me to a point of I'm just tired. You've already proven yourself, but you go into another space and then having to prove yourself again. And the funny thing is that I know I had proven myself because even though I felt internally I had to work my way up, I had to prove myself, I was being requested. So people knew what I could do and they liked what I did. And I was already proven, I was already there, but I didn't see myself that way. I thought I never was entrepreneurial or that I had examples of that, but I did all around me as we were looking through our memory book and thinking back on family members, selling candy and pickles and chili cups out the house, or mowing the yard for a neighbor for $5, or doing hair braids, like, go to my cousin's house and get my hair braided. And she would do people's hair all the time. She had a job, but everybody had something else that they also did, selling plates at church. I used to bake pound cakes and sell them by the slice and sell them by the cake. I didn't think of that as business. I didn't think of that as entrepreneurship. And my husband said it's because in our communities as a Black female, Black women, how our businesses tend to grow and look is usually out of necessity, lack of access, or something else. In the professional world, especially the space we're in, business looks very different. It looks a lot more curated and Main Street, which is not kind of what I came up in. And so having that confidence and fortitude to actually take the step and do it, regardless of how it turns out, I'm glad I have the experience. I'm glad I had the confidence to try it and to do it, because it's helping me to see some things that I didn't even realize I had already been exposed to and that was already a part of me.
I really resonate with that. That recognition, that entrepreneurial spirit was always there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you harness that and now put the infrastructure behind it and help you grow and scale? Like, it's not any different, right? It looks different for, you'd be running a Fortune 500 company, but that Fortune 500 company sometimes started as someone selling candy out their door, right? Or whatever it may be. It's just the vision to scale it, to think that it can be bigger than just you doing whatever it is you're doing. Like, now you can actually create jobs. Now you can actually have a second location or a third or a fifth, right? So I love that you were sitting and reflecting and realizing, like, wait a minute, I've always been a CEO, like, been a boss all my life.
Been undercover.
Y'all just ain't catch up. As you think about in the next 3 to 5 years of your business and wanting to fulfill that legacy commitment, what would you say are your biggest challenges that you're facing right now?
Figuring out the order in which to do things to achieve the vision that I have in place. On a big part of the services piece that I'm doing is because of a product that I'm working on as well. You have to make a decision when you're an entrepreneur, which route you want to go. There's several ways of going into business. There's a startup side, there's services, and then there's product development, consulting, which is part of services. But for me, having the services business, but wanting to create a product that takes those services and makes them more accessible at a broader scale for businesses that don't have the revenue, doing that smartly in a way that doesn't break me financially, and putting the pieces in place and having the right people engaged and getting the right type of funding from the right resources, like figuring out how to put all of that in place and where and when to start. And then just getting the traction with enough revenue to allow for more brain power to be put to actually executing some of those other pieces versus just getting the business piece going. So for me, that's the hardest part, is the order and organization to my plan and my strategy. And so I've been talking to people and seeking, and I've done a couple accelerators, which I found that need to pay more attention to the structure of the accelerator to see if it's going to really meet what I'm looking for, because there's a lot of them out there. Thank you to those people who are funding those things, and they can be helpful, but they can also be a time suck if it's the wrong type of accelerator for you. So I would say that's my biggest challenge right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that and wishing you all the best
Thank you. Thank
in
you.
figuring out those steps and finding those right resources. I think what you're trying to do, one, helps other businesses scale. So I love that you're doing well and doing good both at the same time. So that is appreciated. You touched on this a bit earlier, some of the industry associations that you're involved with. Can you talk a bit about how that has impacted your business and kind of the value that you see in engaging with industry associations?
That's a touch and go thing too. I think just like the accelerators can be beneficial, but can be a time suck, so can industry organizations if you're not in the right ones. And there's a lot of them. So you can spend all your time going to events, participating in stuff and things. If it's not intentional and aligned with your strategy, it could be a waste of time. So for me, the organizations that I am a part of, I try to make sure that they align with what I'm trying to do, who I am. They bring together people that could help further me, as well as that I could potentially help as well. And I always try to ensure that I'm engaged. That tends to yield the best result versus just being a member. And what I mean by that, for example, going way back with AFCEA, I was on the Emerging Professionals and Intelligence Committee. And this was actually before my business, but it goes to the point of being engaged and actively doing things. I was on that committee. We did a lot of studies and support to help facilitate industry government engagement in the intelligence community. And I got one of my most profound and supportive champions committed to me as a member on the board of Epic. And he was on the intelligence committee and became one of my mentors. He actually recruited me into my first and only civil servant job at the FBI. And even to this day, he's retired. Dean Hall is his name. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me putting him out there like that. He was a deputy CIO at the Bureau, and he's retired now, but he is still a confidant and someone I can call and get perspectives that I couldn't imagine because of the roles and positions that he's been in throughout his career, and introductions to people that I otherwise probably wouldn't talk to me sometimes, I would think in some cases. And so I really believe that for industry organizations, being engaged, participating, not just being a member, but really giving back and participating, engaging, and making sure that you're being intentional about which organizations you're joining and ensuring they align with what your growth strategy is, or whether it's your personal growth strategy, your business growth strategy, your competencies in some shape, form, or fashion. It should feed back into you as much as you're willing to put into it.
Thanks for sharing that, and shout out to Dean Hall, you said,
That's right.
because he helped get you here. So
He did. He
shout
did.
out. You mentioned angel investing and being a part of Citrine Angels. First of all, can you just explain what angel investing is? And then what are some steps that folks should take if they're interested in becoming an angel investor? What are some of the real practical steps that folks can start to take in order to realize that as a goal?
So Citrine Angels is an angel membership group, and it's about women investing in women. And so angel investing itself is not a charity. It's definitely investing. And the intent is to provide investment funds for early stage startup organizations or early stage startup businesses. It's very difficult for companies to get funding, especially women and minority businesses. We get less than 2%. Women businesses get less than 2% of investment dollars in the venture space, and minority women get less than 1% of that, especially Black women and Latino. And so Citrine Angels' mission and goal is to help teach women about the process of investing as an angel, and to provide a safe space where you can collaborate with other investors and start to actually write checks, make your first investment. And it doesn't require, some people think I got to have $100,000, $50,000. And that's not necessarily the case. With a group like ours, you can invest as little as 5,000, and you can go in with other members to increase the full investment on what they call a special purpose vehicle, or SPV, that is set up. It's basically an LLC, and it's managed and organized by another organization that we partner with at Citrine. And we don't have a mandatory investment, but we do encourage everyone to obviously write checks as they can. And then we have a monthly membership, which is under $1,000, which is unheard of. Most angel groups have an annual membership, as well as a minimum investment for every year. And the reason we do this is because we're trying to grow the number of women that are angel investors so we can have more women at the table to increase investments that go to women founded organizations. And so if someone's interested in doing it, an organization that is like Citrine, focusing on teaching you about what is angel investing and how to do the due diligence, how to evaluate companies, how to assess the teams on companies, and how to read financial statements, teaching you about the different structures for investments. If you're going to have equity and what are the different investment options, whether it's an equity investment, what is debt investment, what does all that stuff mean? And what are the terms? And so, yeah, joining a group that helps educate you and provides safety, I think, is a good space, because most of this space is very male dominated. And so having the ability to be with a group of women who's interested in helping other women as well is a good first start. And I would say going to maybe some of the pitch events that are free and seeing like what the format is and meeting people in the ecosystem would be a good first start.
Thank you for sharing that. And we'll be sure to include the information about Citrine Angels in the show notes if folks want to learn more. So this season is all about GovCon. So what are some words of advice that you would have for particularly women who are interested in GovCon or they're getting started in the GovCon space?
I would say don't be scared. I say don't be scared because GovCon is hard. That there's no doubt about that. But we're women. And so things are hard, and hard is not a deterrent, I don't feel. I will also say don't be disillusioned. There's a lot of marketing out there saying, I got $2 million, 3 days in government contracting, and you can too. And it just doesn't really work like that. And so do your homework for new entrants that are coming in. Don't pay for stuff you don't have to. Government, it's almost like the process of just getting set up is weeds out people who really aren't interested in doing it. I mean, you can pay companies to help you, but the crazy thing is that you have to pull all the information and provide it to them for them to do the work on your behalf, when actually what they're doing takes way less time than all the time you spent pulling all that information to give to them. And you could have took another 35 minutes to an hour to just put it in yourself, but you're going to pay them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to do that. PTAC, the Women Business Center, PTAC now called Apex Accelerator. There's plenty of them, CBP, SBDC, the Small Business Development Centers. There's plenty of different organizations that get government funds to help businesses that want to do business in the government space. And the Small Business Administration website also has a lot of information. So does the General Services Administration, GSA. Do your homework and take a chance and come and check it out. Also, you can go to our site 2039 as well. We give a lot of free assets and information for new entrants that are trying to come into the space. We don't believe in charging for the free stuff, but if you do get to a point where you need some support, of course, we help with that as well. But check us out and get some information before you decide to just jump in with 2 feet, because it is definitely deep waters.
And 2039 offers you that life raft, that lifeboat to help you.
Definitely try to do that and make it easier if you're trying to get set up and understand how to pursue opportunities, building out a proposal library, having those templates, and digitizing some of those workflows so that you can operate a bit more effectively and efficiently and be ready to move when the opportunities come, because that's a big part of the pie, is actually being ready to take advantage of the opportunities. And so that's what we try to help small businesses with.
Tasha, can you share the website and also information about your podcast?
Yes, ma'am. So our website is www.twenty, the numbers 39.com. So 20 spelled out, 39.com. And we have a community called Hive 39 that you can get to on our website as well for consultants and small businesses. And the intent is we share free resources. We have a quarterly report with all the goodies about events that are coming up, changes in policies and regulations that's going to impact small business. Sometimes we get discounts for cost-effective vendors that we've already vetted. And you can meet other small businesses and consultants there. And then our podcast, which is also on our website on the homepage, and of course available on pretty much all the platforms. Is called Unveiled GovCon Stories, where we speak with small business owners and have them tell us about and experience their story in government contracting so that we can get those lessons learned and help other business owners know they're not alone. And to also just spotlight for government and large businesses the true experience of small businesses in the space. So go listen to us and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. Love to have a conversation. Also, if you want to be on there sometime.
Yeah, well, there you have it. You got an invitation from Tasha herself. All the information will be included in the show notes so you all can easily go find 2039 as well as the Unveiled GovCon podcast. So, Tasha, before you get out of here, there's two questions I always ask my guests. And the first question is, what are one or two songs that are on your power playlist and why?
Oh my gosh. Jasmine Sullivan Masterpiece, because it's a powerful anthem, in my opinion. It's a woman coming into her own and seeing herself. It just gets me in that headspace of my own power and trusting in that to do what I need to do. So that's why I like Masterpiece. I'll say Golden, because it's another one of those kind of songs by Jill Scott. Both of those songs, I would say it's because they're empowering and they kind of get me in a positive headspace, and they help reinforce no matter what happens, no matter what somebody says, whatever external forces are at play, whether they're positive or negative, those songs ground me and they kind of give me that fortitude to do what I need to do. And it just put me in the right headspace. So those are two songs I would say I like.
Great. And what is one book that you would say has helped you thrive in business?
The book that always come to mind first is called The Go Giver. And you'll have to forgive me because I'm forgetting the names of the authors off the top of my head right now. But this is a book I was exposed to in a mentoring program set up by AFCEA. And the concepts of the book just made you think about business in a different light, because I'm not a big self-help book type person. It was written as a story, but it has like those 5 core principles. And I'm not even going to try and recite those principles. But the overall point of it was you don't have to be cutthroat like a shark and all these other things. It was actually the actual opposite of building those relationships, and kind of how we were talking about the network that you have to have. Even though you're being intentional and you're being strategic, there's the authenticity and genuineness of really wanting to get to know someone, having that connectedness. And then there just happened to also be that opportunity for you to partner potentially on business. And so that book kind of bolsters up to that, and how it describes pursuing business, being someone who's more of a facilitator or someone that's more kind of like a champion or what have you. Who are you? And do you have multiple roles and multiple hats? And by just being authentic in that space and being who you are, opportunities definitely will make their way to you. And I'm a true believer, you shouldn't chase money. If you do what's right and you do what you know how to do well, it will come. And that's not to say don't work and that don't make plans, but I don't feel like you have to go chasing everything down. Put the work in, do what you know how to do, and do those things well, and people will see and want to be a part of that. And so that's why Go Giver is one of those books that I enjoy. And it's storytelling, I think, at its best, but it's about business. It's about life and just being a good person.
Well, I love that. I think that's a great note to end on. Don't chase money, that if you do what you do well, then it will come to you. So I love that as a point to end on. So, Tasha, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk with you today. As promised and as anticipated, this was a great conversation. And I'm looking forward to many, many more with you. So, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Bye.